That's another big misconception is there's not enough research done in the female athlete population, but there are so many amazing academics when you actually sift through the medical journals and you can go on Google Scholar, there's a lot of free papers on there
Mhm.
and you'll see that there's so many great academics studying the female athlete across all sports, soccer, field
Yeah.
hockey, softball, ballet, gymnastics, like every single sport. So we have gotten more research in this population.
Mhm.
Of course,
Sure.
we could always use more as women's sports continue to grow. And I think that's going to organically happen. We just have more research because the women's game is just getting better and more people are getting into that field. But we have enough research at this point to start taking action with our training and other controllable factors.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of echo and agree that even, as a youth athlete growing up, it was always just like, yeah, you're probably going to tear your ACL if you're a female athlete. And then like how terrible is that? Like if we think we're going to tear our ACL and we have that mindset, yeah, it's probably going to happen. And so it really is really disempowering. And it's like it was something that you almost thought you had no control over. You could maybe strength train a little bit, but still, even if you did that, you were still probably going to tear your ACL. And it was very and still is very disempowering and like just not taking that personal responsibility. And so I love this article for the reason, and we'll get into the specifics, the actionable items and controllables, but I think that's one of the biggest take homes that I want people to get from this is that like it's not linear. It's not that just one thing causes the other thing. It's like the relationship between all of the factors is what causes it. And so it's time to kind of number one, take back the power. And we'll talk about how you can do that. But number two, realize that it's never just one single cause to any injury or any sickness, like you said, whether it's an injury or a sickness or a cancer, whatever it is, like there's always so many factors and can't just be boiled down to one thing. So with that being said, I know you have, I think it was four things in that article that you talked about, kind of those actionable steps. So let's dive into the first one, which is physical literacy. So this is obviously a big one. I mean, they're all big ones. But talk a little bit about what physical literacy is, and what parents and both athletes can do to improve this, to, take action on it.
This is a really important one because we are starting to see in the past decade the result of the early specialization model, the year round travel soccer model for the younger ages. And when we look at how the ACL injuries have increased in the past decade, we can look at this. Okay, well, this seems like a common denominator is that introduction of early specialization. It's so interesting because even though we've had more access to GPS sensors, there's actually more young girls getting into performance facilities and actually getting into the gym more than in the 90s. We didn't really
Right.
have strength coaches in the 90s, but what's going on here? Oh, okay, well, maybe we should consider early specialization and its dangers. So, again, this is another factor where there is a wealth of research behind it and why early specialization is very dangerous for any female athlete younger than age 12, age 11. During ages 8 to 12 is really that time for a female athlete to get exposed to different environments where she can build a very sturdy foundation of movement skills. So that's what physical literacy means essentially is just building motor skills to be able to move the body well, be coordinated, have balance, have good body awareness in space, and be able to react to stimuli. And that's really what's transferable to soccer and to our sports is being able to react quickly. And it's so important for girls to get exposure to those movements and build different muscle groups because if they're doing soccer since age 8,
Mhm.
pretty much over 8 months of the year, that's usually the average of what most of these girls are doing.
Right.
They're overusing a lot of muscles in the quadriceps and also the hip flexor, and that's causing an imbalance, and their knees are not as stable because they're lacking in upper body strength, just overall control of their core and trunk area, and they're really lacking in that hamstring strength, especially if they're not strength training. And we'll get into that next factor. The specialization is just really overusing a lot of muscle groups. And I think a lot of people are under the impression, well, if my girl specializes early, she's going to get ahead and she's going to become a soccer star. But in the end, if you give that exposure to her with a variety of environments and you build all muscle groups in the body, including the upper body, she's going to be a well rounded athlete so that later in high school and in college, she can have a healthy career, but she'll also improve her performance as well.
Yeah.